Hi everyone, Scott here. Welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100, collaboration channel of movie reviewers here on YouTube. We do different themes each week, different actors, different actresses, directors, genres, what have you. And this week our theme is Zoe Saldana, who of course is famous for appearing in both Avatar and as Uhura in the new Star Trek films. Of course, she's done a lot of other stuff besides that. And I wanted to do a film of hers that I hadn't seen before called The Words, which was co-written and directed by a couple of guys named Brian Klugman and Lee Sternthal. And these guys are actually longtime childhood friends of Bradley Cooper, so when he became well-known, when he became a bankable star, that made the project that they wanted to do all the more viable. He enabled them to, get the funding together to make the film, which is what they did. They also got a pretty stellar cast besides him and Zoe Saldana. Jeremy Irons, Dennis Quaid, Olivia Wilde, a few other cool character actors. J.K. Simmons, for example, who played Jameson in the Spider-Man movies, the original Spider-Man movies. I mean the Raimi Spider-Man movies. I don't know if there's original Spider-Man movies now. Anyway, this movie is about a writer living in New York City with this girl. Bradley Cooper, of course, is the writer, and Zoe Saldana is his girl, and they've been together for a long time, since college, I guess. He's trying to write, but isn't really making a go of it. No one's interested in his manuscripts. He's happy with them. He likes them as well. He's really putting his all into them, working on them for the years, but, people just aren't interested. Partly because he isn't really a bankable name. So, he ends up having to take a job, at a publishing firm, just, as a gopher or, that kind of thing. Really is doubting whether or not he's going to be able to make it as a writer, as an actual novelist. He eventually gets married to Zoe Saldana, and they honeymoon in Paris, and it's while touring Paris and shopping there, he comes across an old satchel, basically, an old sort of satchel from the 40s or something like that, which is very, anyway, it appeals to both of them in some way, so they end up buying it. Once he gets back home, he discovers that there's actually pages inside, an entire book, typewritten book back in the 40s, that's been sitting in this satchel undiscovered for decades. And through a series of circumstances involving him retyping the entire book onto his computer for some reason, the excuse that he gives at the time is that he wanted to feel the words going through him. But what happens, of course, is that Zoe Saldana discovers this on his computer, thinks that he's written it, and insists that he has to show it to, the publishers that he works for. And he just can't bring himself to tell her that it's not actually his book. He didn't write it. He just typed it onto his computer from pages that were already typed decades earlier. So he does what she asks of him. He sends the book to, he gives the book to his boss, and after his boss reads it, says, "Oh my goodness, this is an incredible book. We've got to publish it." And he's like, "Oh great, what am I going to do now?" And he just goes along with it. He doesn't tell anyone the truth until, he becomes the toast of New York City. And then, of course, the actual author of the book shows up. Jeremy Irons plays the young man who was a soldier stationed in Paris, basically, who meets a woman, gets married to her, they have a child, the child dies from an illness, and after all this tragedy happens, he just basically writes this book, even though he's never really written anything before. He just kind of pours out of him. And he gives it to his wife to read, but she accidentally leaves it on a train in the satchel, which is why it goes undiscovered for so many decades. But of course, once as an old man, this author, played by Jeremy Irons, discovers this book that Bradley Cooper has written, and it's a big success, and he reads it, of course, immediately recognizes, he tracks down Bradley Cooper, and he says, "Hey, guess what? I know that book isn't actually yours." So now Bradley Cooper is faced with this dilemma about what he's going to do with it. Here's the thing, though. There's actually another storyline involving Dennis Quaid's character. Dennis Quaid is actually narrating the story because it's a book that he's written called The Words. There are a lot of movies like this which actually take their title from either a book or a song or something like that one of the characters has written. In fact, I thought the Basic Instinct should have been like that. It would be nice if Sharon Stone's book that she writes about a fictionalized version of Michael Douglas was actually called Basic Instinct instead of Shooter. I thought that was kind of a dull title. Anyway, he is reading from a book called The Words, which he has written, to an audience of academics prior to the book actually being published. He's a successful author, and so he's reading the first, like, 2/3 of the book out loud to them and then says, haha, you want to read the third part of the book, you have to buy it. Of course, everyone already knows all this, takes it as the joke as it is. But there's a graduate student who finagled her way into the audience by begging her professor for his ticket because she wanted to meet this writer and talk to him about his work. She is, of course, played by Olivia Wilde, and being that she's extremely attractive, manages to talk him into leaving with her and going back to his apartment, where she asks him, okay, tell me the rest of the story. Of course, this book is going to be published, in a few weeks, and so everyone's going to get to read them, but she just can't wait any longer. Plus, she's just interested in sleeping with the guy because he's a famous, handsome writer. He's Dennis Quaid, obviously. So he ends up telling her the rest of the story. Now, the funny thing is that it's heavily implied that Dennis Quaid's character is actually the Bradley Cooper character, even though they have different names. In other words, The Words, the book that the Dennis Quaid character has written, is actually a fictionalized version of something that actually happened to him, meaning he was the guy who had no success as a writer until he discovered this long-lost manuscript, published it under his name. And so the story of the book is the story of what happened when he, was discovered by the original writer, and told that, hey, I know about, the fact that you stole this book right here. But the problem with the film is that it leaves so many unanswered questions in it. Like, for example, the Olivia Wilde character, I kept expecting her to be like, the writer from back in the 40s, his wife eventually married someone else and had a daughter, I'm like her granddaughter, something like that. But that doesn't happen. And although he asks her, although she asks him about his marriage, and he says, I'm separated from his wife, so you kind of figure that that's what happened with Bradley Cooper and Zoe Saldana. In the fictionalized story, it's not really made clear. There's all this sort of stuff is left up in the air, and you sort of have to reach these conclusions yourself. And that's something that I think that Dennis Quaid was trying to assert with his book, and the fact that, our individual stories as people really don't have endings. I mean, you can end a book, but even when a life ends, there's still the people who that interacted with that person that go on with their own stories, so really the story never ends. So draw whatever conclusions you like. There's no morality being insisted upon here. It's just sort of a slice of life, I guess you could say. But it's all about kind of, yeah, I don't know what it's about, actually, come to think of it. I mean, obviously, Bradley Cooper feels bad about stealing the guy's work and tries to make up for it, but he's stymied by the fact that the old man doesn't want any credit. And his publisher, of course, says, we can't tell anybody about this because, we'll be in a huge amount of shit. So, yeah, what in the end is the point of the whole thing? What exactly does Olivia want from Dennis Quaid's character? Does she want anything other than just, night with a famous writer? I don't know. I really don't know. It sort of ends on this big question mark. No, I'm really not sure about that. I haven't spoiled the entire movie, in case you're wondering. If you want to, there's conclusions to obviously the stories within the stories. So you have, like, basically 3 stories within stories. You have Dennis Quaid's book that he's written, which is about Bradley Cooper, and Bradley Cooper, of course, has this story which was written by Jeremy Irons. It all sort of folds into one another. Anyway, it's a pretty decent drama. Again, I wish it would have ended on a more conclusive note, because all of a sudden it just kind of ends and you're like, whoa, what, that's it? That's the end? Oh, okay. Anyway, so that's The Words. A moderate recommendation on that one. It's okay. And Zoe Saldana, she's generally a good actress, I think. I think that she's got a good future playing action heroines. She was in this movie called Colombiana, in which she was basically like Special Forces or an assassin or something like that. So, I think she's got a future playing action movies as well as a lot of other kinds of parts. Yeah, she's there's the funny thing about movies in which people are creating art is that, a lot of times people have to express a certain belief about, and this is the, where an actor's strengths and weaknesses come to play. And whether or not they can actually appear to be genuinely moved by something that they've read or something that they've listened to and going, oh my goodness, that's the greatest work of art, one of the greatest works of art I've ever seen in my life, you know, and she's pretty convincing with that, you know. After she reads the book, she's just like, oh my goodness, you have to show this book to people, it's so incredible, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, that's definitely a credit to her as an actress that she's able to pull off that. As well as, you know, other characters in the book. Some of them are sycophantic. They're like, oh my goodness, you're so great, you know, and they're clearly kissing up to the, you know, person with all the success. But some people genuinely believe that it's a great book, you know. Of course, she doesn't know at the time that it's not actually his. Anyway, I'm rambling. Thanks very much for watching. We've got a new theme starting tomorrow, of course. Hope you'll tune in for that. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Please visit our Facebook page. If you have any themes, actors, actresses, directors, what have you, that you'd like us to touch on in a future week, please leave us a comment or a message. Let us know. Appreciate it. Talk to you later. Bye.